Hey, it's Imogen Lamport from 16 Style Types here today to chat to you live about the INFJ style type. What can they teach you? Just waiting for Jill to come. I'm sure she'll be here any second. And she will be joining me. Jill Chivers will be joining me very shortly. We'll be talking all things INFJ right now, and in about half an hour's time, we'll be talking general style types questions. So there's Jill. I'm just going to add her. There we go. You'll suddenly see Jill in the top corner of your screen. So lovely to see you here today. Sue too. Appreciate your support. Hi Jill.
Hi, how are you?
Great. So we are live now talking INFJ, which is one of the 16 style types. I've just got to quickly get something up on my other screen, which is just over here. Sorry. My mouse has disappeared while I'm doing this. Which is always the way when your mouse disappears.
You got to love technology, don't you?
Yeah, where did that go to?
I know.
From when you've got two screens is a long way where you're going, which screen is it on?
Yes, I know. Well, INFJ, such an interesting type, the subtle stylist, the style enigma. So we had a lot of interesting conversations when we were developing the report and doing our research with INFJs. Interestingly, when we wrote our report and then we had people review it, we had almost more INFJs than any other type review this particular report, which is interesting when you consider that of the statistics, INFJs are considered not to be in huge quantities, although of course we never know how many of a type there are in the world until the entire world has been typed. But so that was really interesting that we had a lot of women with INFJ preferences that we knew in our circle, and of course including Jane Kesey, a member of our team, very well known and respected in the international type world. But we had a lot of them who were interested in reading the report and giving us their opinions on it.
Yes, we didn't have to harass them to get any feedback.
No, there were a couple of types that were a bit thin on the ground. We had to forage around to find them, but that was not the case for INFJs.
No, which is great, and it's very funny considering they are, more rare. Yet, we seem to attract them. I think, they're intelligent women.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and they're also fairly prolific in the type world online altogether. I think that there are 4 types in particular that tend to be very curious about not so much themselves as a person, but about the type to which they have a preference, and INFJs are one of those. I see a lot of commentary coming through about INFJs interested in their INFJ-ness and others' INFJ-ness.
Do you think that's because, just talking type here for a moment, because they are more unusual in the overall world as far as we're aware, that they can feel a little bit more foreign? So part of that is going, oh, I don't feel like everybody else behaves in different ways, or so I don't feel quite as maybe normal or average as everybody else. Do you think that and so therefore there's more of that search for understanding?
Yeah, I think that's got a lot to do with it. The intuitive types, those with N in their type code in general, I think tend to be seekers of information, applied information about their type. Because they're looking for a way to verify that it is accurate and that it applies to them. Some of the intuitive types are just interested in the theory and whether it's verified and, a worthwhile theory. But INFJs in general, because they have this driving need for uniqueness in so much of their lives, I think their type information is some kind of synthesis and sifting through of all this other information that's out there that applies to this thing to which I am a member, this group to which I am a member. And then this checking in process, does this apply to me? Is this right for me? And because they do have this inner vision, this holding of an inner vision, that data collection, that sifting through can be almost endless. There can be no point at which they feel they have gathered enough information So that's, you know, yeah.
Yes, I understand that. It's as an INTJ, which we have the same dominant function of introverted intuition. It's that, you know, there's always something more. You know, that there is nothing to this search. And I think one of
And
the things that,
sorry, you go. No. Oh, well, I was just going to say one of the key differences with INTJ versus INFJ is because the auxiliary function is a feeling function and has to do with connecting in with others, that it's not so much just about intellectual curiosity. It is about interactions with others and how this information can be used to further their ideas with other people. That's a hallmark of INFJ that distinguishes it from INTJ.
Yes. So let's just talk about the style type, the INFJ, the subtle stylist, the style enigma. And when we were thinking about names, this actually wasn't a tricky one to come up with as far as some of the types we had more of a, you know, it took a bit longer for us to come up with a name. But, you know, this one kind of almost, they named themselves.
Yeah.
There is certainly a great subtlety to their style. They're never the flashiest person in the room. They're never the most obvious. There is definitely a not wishing to draw attention to self in that kind of way, is there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think of all the style types, INFJs are possibly the one that it's most easy to wrongly assume that they don't have the strength of character that they have, because there is this subtlety and this not drawing attention to themselves. I think it can be, you can make a terrible assumption that they're a bit of a pushover or a bit of a lightweight because they do not express themselves either in their style or generally in a very forthright, direct or bold way. And I think you can learn to your detriment the hard way when you come up against an INFJ who often has very strongly held views and is very well researched, that you were really wrong if you thought that they might be easy to maneuver or easy to push around.
Yes. And so which is, it's an interesting, that they've got a subtlety, but they're very, what's the word, kind of grounded in their inner vision and their you know, what they know, I guess. But what's also interesting is that there's an enigmatic quality to them, which is why we call them the style enigma. Where, you know, like you just kind of never feel it, right, like you really know them in the way. There's always you know, that bit of mystery, that bit of hidden, like you can't. There's some types that you could go, I pretty much know what that person's thinking, you know.
Yeah. Right.
You will never feel that with an INFJ, I don't think.
Yeah, absolutely. And because this inner world is very rich, and in general, introverted intuitives, the INTJ, INFJ, tend to trust their vision more so than other kinds of information, and specifically external information. The matching process is something like this. I'm holding it in a vision. Let's talk about it with regard to style, of what a particular look might be. I'm preparing for an event or going on a holiday or going to an interview, presenting something important. And then the matching process becomes, how do I find something in the real world that will match up with this vision of myself? Depending on how specifically the physical parts of that inner vision are, like I am seeing a navy blue dress that ends at the knee and has this particular kind of sleeve, the difficulty becomes in manifesting that in real life. And so two bits of advice come into place there. One is either loosen the specificity of the details so that it becomes a little bit more look and feel, or at least adding that into the picture. And secondly, get external input to help you get that vision right. INFJs often report getting into style trouble when they either abandon their rules they've set for themselves because they have to settle. I need something. Or they don't get enough input to balance this inner vision, which can feel inviolable, like I cannot go against this inner vision that I have. So having an external source that you can use as a checking point, someone to go shopping with you. But it has to be a very particular person, someone supportive of you, who understands your personality, who knows how you like to shop. I know shopping with Jane Kesey, our 16 Style Types partner, who has INFJ preferences, I get into a very particular zone when I'm in a shopping experience with Jane, and she's a delight to shop with, but it is very, very particular how she likes to have that input presented and not presented. So if you are an INFJ, choose your shopping partner or your external checking point partner with some care.
Yes. Are there any tips you could offer people who are shopping with an INFJ of how to do it?
Yes, I would. If you are not an INFJ and you are shopping with a woman who has INFJ preferences, be aware that she will always make her own choice. So even if she seems to be sort of receptive and it's a very harmonious rapport between the two of you, that doesn't mean that she's going to take your advice. And in fact, I find more often with Jane, and there's another INFJ that I shop with, more often than not, they will not. If I make a recommendation. So I tend not to make recommendations, but gently act as a sounding board, offering options. So for example, I went shopping with Jane for a statement piece of jewelry for her son's wedding, and we went to a particular store, and my job was to point things out. Oh, I see this, I see that, this seems to have the colors of the dress. Make some input and then step away, step physically away, leave the person in their own physical space and kind of have them come back to you if they want to discuss something. So that's a really important thing, that the physical space around the person seems to be really important as well. They can feel hemmed in fairly quickly, and that is not a helpful space for an INFJ who's in an environment where she's taking a lot of information, she's checking it in with this inner vision. That's really what's happening. When you recognize that so much of what is going on is invisible to you, it isn't, you cannot see it. And energy and attention needs to go to that. So you need to leave them alone so they can do that successfully. But be there should they, want to discuss things with you. So there's some of the things I've learned.
Yeah, that kind of introverted intuition, because I know I would be the same, where it's like, I can have things pointed out because I might have missed something. I don't see the detail in the same way as that someone of your type might see the detail. But then it's still got to go in. I've got to go and have an internal process before a decision can be made. And so it's then got to go through all the filters. And so there's all those, is it authentic, and is it, does it meet all the criteria, or whatever those filters are that are happening.
Absolutely.
And one of the things I think that's very interesting about the INFJ is they have a very strong kind of need to not be the same as everybody else.
Absolutely.
Don't, and this is why they can end up with a wardrobe full of orphans if they're not careful.
Yes.
It's because they'll see the unique, the different, and then buy things and then not think about, well, how does it go back with other things? How does it work in my wardrobe as a whole? And is it cohesive? Is it going to, is it something that's rather than it's an amazing, unique piece? That's still always subtle. I mean, I think that's the thing I always notice about their style. They're always still a very subtle sort of, they're not allowed or, they generally would not go down what we call the dramatic dressing style. That's generally something they will avoid unless they, for some reason or other, particularly want to use it. That's not a natural sort of relationship, but they will probably have a lot of more the kind of quirky, the more unique, the different, the slightly edgy, but then always still aware of they wanting to be credible. So one of their drivers is this wanting to have their ideas seen as credible, that they're seen as intelligent, that they're seen as, that nobody's questioning their ideas. And so this is where I think that unlike some types who might happily go, well, I'm going to be quirky, different in a way that's really different, and I don't care what anybody else thinks, they still are aware. Like, it's like Jane will talk about when she had to work in a suit environment, and everybody else was supposed to wear you know, a navy suit with a white shirt. So she had like a light pink shirt. And
Yeah.
that was her way of being different, but not so different that it was throwing all the rules out, or, you know, in
Yeah.
that kind of,
It wasn't a hot pink shirt that drew attention to
yeah.
itself. It
And
was
it
sort of
wasn't,
this,
yeah,
yeah,
you know, probably just a slightly different navy, or I can't even remember what the color, you know, but it was like,
yeah.
it was just marginally different. It was different
And
enough that people
interestingly, the motivation is about unique expression, not about rebellion. And that
yeah,
is also really interesting in that INFJs in general like to be appropriate. They like to know what the dress code is and they want to fit within that, but they want their unique expression to show through. And that's because their internal experience is that they have something unique to offer. They do have this inner vision. They do have this perspective that perhaps others don't. And so matching those two things up is about authenticity and having the insides match the outside. So if you resemble others, then that sense of uniqueness just goes out the window and they can feel like they're wearing a costume, or that they're trying to be somebody else, or they're trying to fit in so much that what they have to offer is not available. And that's a form of death. That's a form of annihilation, self-annihilation, when this perspective that you have and these ideas that you have can't be shared with others, which is a huge thing that INFJs have to contribute.
so it's always got to feel authentic, and it's got to be
Mm.
that bit different, but it's still got to work in the environment. So I think, and that's something that, you know, that other types could learn. But this is a useful skill. It's that being authentic with self, yet still presenting an image that's going to give you credibility, and have you listen to. Um,
Yeah,
uh, who is an INFJ to relate to this? I watch all of the ENFP. Oh,
that was
who is an
Bernadette.
INFJ?
Yes.
Like, so in the outside world, um, do you know of any INFJs that publicly say they're INFJs?
Public figures.
Yeah,
Oh, I know off the top of my head, I don't know. I know that if you look up INFJ celebrities, you'll find
yeah,
some of them. Always tricky with any type to look at public figures, because what you're seeing is a whole range of behaviours that could have been moulded and polished for a particular outcome, as opposed to a true representation of who that is. The introverted types, that tends to apply to even more so, because their dominant function is introverted. So a huge part of who they are is not visible to the external world. And that's certainly true of INFJs.
yes. Small percentage of women, but an amazing percentage of women. So we've had a
Yeah.
few questions too that I think we should talk about. Um, so Paul is interested in ideas for simplifying morning decisions and minimizing the trial and error process.
Yeah.
And how the uniform works. And I know that this is part of this mood. So intuitives tend to be mood dressers, too, and so it is one of those things. And I know for myself that sometimes, like, I can stand in front of the wardrobe for a long time, and yeah, sometimes it can get really frustrating. Um,
Mm.
and I think one of the things that could be good for an INFJ, or anyone with an introverted intuition in particular, probably dominant function, is is almost to maybe, you know, spend a bit of time in your wardrobe, create a bunch of outfits that you like, photograph them,
Mm.
because sometimes having that little visual reminder, pop them in an album on your phone, or, you know, wherever, your iPad, or, you know, somewhere that's easy to access. And then when you get up in the morning, so rather than having planned, like you might plan the outfit, a ESFJ happily plans the outfit the night before, because I can plan an outfit the night before and wake up the next morning and it's not right. It's
Yeah.
then, but if I have access to maybe 20 or 30 outfits that I've pre-planned, like that I've gone, these all feel good to me, they suit me in a way that I'm happy with, And so then I think that if I can then swipe through an album and go, okay, and then one of them might strike me as, oh, this feels like today.
Yeah.
Like maybe I've got, that's my for today.
It's,
Um,
it's so fascinating. It feels like
yeah.
today. I love that.
But yeah, so I think that that's something that that could be a useful thing, because it's very easy. I know what can happen to me is I'll create some outfit and I'll wear it and I'll go, oh, I love this outfit today and it was feeling so great. And the next time I think I'll remember it because I just don't have that head for detail. It'll
Yeah.
have gone. And I'll go, oh, which necklace did I put with this? I don't remember.
Right.
Which were the shoes? You know, I kind of, that sort of detail just, it just like fades away. And so
Yeah.
having that kind of physical reminder, I think, that photographic proof going, these are outfits I really like. Um, or, you know, like, you know, just even collect an album of every day you manage an outfit that you go, I feel really good in this. Take a photo of it, pop it in an album, and then you'll have that. This is the things I put together. And that actually means I've got my quick and easy sort of, you know, way of
Ready,
going. Because
reckoner.
a true uniform is probably less INFJ, um,
Yeah.
in a way that
And what
it's,
you're describing, I'm sorry.
or in the way that some types, you know, like an ISTJ, more than happy to have themselves a uniform.
Well, that's where I was going to go. What you're describing is a sensing process, is to borrow from sensing, particularly introverted sensing, and to develop a photograph album, a filing cabinet, a
Yes,
reservoir of information that contains the detail that you can retrieve very easily, which is, of course, what ISTJs and ISFJs do naturally and so very, very well. And this is what's so helpful about the 16 types, is we can learn from each of them and borrow from some of the strategies that just come so naturally to one type. And that is an excellent way for anybody, but I would say especially for the intuitive types for whom this does not come naturally, to borrow from that kind of behavior and use it when it's going to be helpful for them. And I would add to what you've said and say, for an INFJ, they're a dominant perceiving type, which means a dominant process is around gathering information, and from a very particular source. It's why we refer to this inner vision, because that's the source of the data that they are perceiving, that they are taking in. When you're getting dressed, you're really in a different mode. You're in a decision-making mode. You're in an assessing mode. You're in a moving into action mode. And so that is not a perceiving function. So one of the things that can be helpful when you understand the dynamic nature of type is to recognize that you're not actually using your dominant function when you're getting ready, at least not in its totality. So that whole mood thing is a part of the picture, but in a way, I've taken in that information, and now I actually effectively need to sort of close that door and move to my second function, which for INFJs is feeling. It's about this assessment process and making decisions and taking action. And so that can be really helpful, because half of the 16 style types are perceiving dominant. And this is where this sort of sense of endless possibilities,
yes,
or spending time taking in information, can slow things down. And there's nothing wrong with that, of course, except if you're in a hurry, or if you have a
yes,
short period of time and you need to get out the door. You can't spend endless time deciding what you
yes.
want to wear. You got to make a decision, get dressed, and move on with your day.
Yeah, and I think this actually rolls very neatly into Paula's next thing, which is ideas for simplifying morning decisions and minimalizing the trial and error process. No, so, but also too is we are both perfectionists but overlook detail, and I think the perfectionism is part of that is that introverted intuition where you know there's just so much more out there. You know that there's that you don't know everything. I think that's one of those things is we are the probably most aware of how little we know.
Right.
And endless search for more. I'm going, I know there's more out there. Um, and so I don't, and I think the thing that's helped me in overcoming this inaction that can happen with that is actually I have a mantra of that perfection is the enemy of action.
Right.
I don't see perfection as a good thing. I've learned that it's actually can be, disabling. It can freeze you. Like part of that thing of making a decision, like going, "But I haven't got enough information in yet." So when your dominant process is a perceiving function, having to, I've just got to make a decision and move on. So going, my outfit's never going to be perfect, and I'm okay with that because nothing is actually perfect. The world
Right.
is not perfect. Nobody is perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect outfit.
Yeah.
And so actually learning that, and you kind of sometimes have to keep reminding yourself. I think that could be useful. I mean, I know it's useful for me, is to know that that kind of, so the perfection is not about detail in the way that it is for S. It's a different version of perfection. I think it's more about knowing that there's more possibilities and there's all sorts of stuff, but also knowing that I have to make a decision and move on, and that nothing is perfect, and that in fact imperfect is beautiful.
Yeah, and a lot of the INFJs, the feedback that we got is their immobilization or their stuckness comes from trying to match up this inner vision of what their style could or should be with external reality. Either the gear is not in my wardrobe, I cannot put an outfit together, I physically just don't have it, it's not there. And when they're in acquisition mode, when they're shopping, they cannot find the things that they have in their mind. And that's where the perfectionism can come in. It's not getting stuck on this necklace or that necklace. It's the thing doesn't exist. And it's because this inner vision is so clear, and this inner vision is so very well trusted. In general, introverts tend to trust their internal world more than the external world. And so when you hold an inner vision that is both dear to you, clear to you, and extremely trusted, to try and match that up and have the manifestation, the external world, fall short all of the time can be extremely frustrating, which is why we gave those two suggestions earlier as ways to help with that particular process.
Yes. Now, Anne's asked about, I get lost on how to put a wardrobe together as an INFJ. Because there's a lot of decisions to be made. And I think particularly and I think this is what we're talking about too, that you can spend a bit too much time sometimes in your perceiving function. And so sometimes it's going, okay, maybe, I don't know, time limit it and go, I'm going to decide that after 2 hours of shopping, and what you could do, I think one of the things that could be very useful for someone who's an INFJ would be, when I go shopping, I'll go somewhere, I'll put stuff away, I'll get them to put it behind the counter at all the different stores, things that I'm thinking about. Don't buy anything, put it all behind the stores, but then after 2 hours, I am going to make my decisions. And I'll go back and get the pieces that speak to me the most. That could be one way, is actually maybe time limiting. So going, I have to force myself to make a decision. I've got to bring that closure in.
I would add to that, which is an excellent strategy. I love that. What we're really talking about is putting parameters that allow that inner vision to still be there and the touchstone, but don't allow it to dominate absolutely everything. And another parameter I would add in is starting to develop your sense of style rules, the things that you will never break. And then the things that you perhaps have a, more maybe not kind of thing, and writing those things down. That's another parameter, another checklist that you can use, so that if, for example, I'll use an example from Jane, no ruffles ever, no sequins ever. She doesn't do shiny, shimmery. She just never does. I've been shopping with her and held out something that in every other way would have been perfect for her. She doesn't even bother crossing the store to look at it if I'm holding it. No. Got a ruffle on it? No, because she knows that doesn't work for her. And when she has broken that rule, perhaps because of some pushy ESFJ that said, oh, but it's so great for you, she never wears it. So she has learned these style rules were not just sort of made up on a whim. They have been hard won through trial and error, and she does not break them. And that has been extremely helpful for her in developing a wardrobe that really works.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is making your own set of style rules. So, like you will get, well, here are the general color and style rules. And then I've got to make my own version. I've got to make my own guidelines. Often what I'll say, it's often the 3 to 5 things that matter most to me. And then they're the things that I won't break, because that's when you know, and it makes the decisions easier. And too, I think.
And I would say perhaps more than many other types, what is important about those self-determined rules are the don'ts. They are as perhaps more important than the do's, because INFJs are a type who potentially can end up with a lot of orphans because they've found a unique piece. Perhaps it's an artisan piece, or it's a one-off store or something like that, and they have fallen in love with it, but it doesn't coordinate with other things. So the don'ts, I would say, are very important. For some other style types, I wouldn't necessarily recommend a don't or a negative focus. It's not a negative in this case. It's one of those things that this just does not work for me. And it might be about texture. It might be about color. It might be about silhouette. Who knows what it's about? That's the whole point, is it's unique to you. But I would strongly encourage INFJs to be aware of their don'ts.
And I think too, another thing would be, if you need to match something, take it shopping with you. Because that's also going to give you that information that you need, whether or not this great thing, if you're going, you know, what are my holes? What do I need? Will it go with, you know, something else in my wardrobe? I think rather than going, because you can have this imagining, and I know I've done this myself, where I can go, I can imagine those things working together, and then when I try them on, they actually don't. And I'm sure that there's a similar sort of thing where my vision says it should work, but in the reality, because it's down to the little details, and maybe the shapes or the proportions just aren't quite right, it doesn't work in the way that I've been hoping it to. And I think this is where this whole this inner vision thing is such a big thing for this type. I've got a picture.
Deborah's just posted this, I think, a wonderful thing about never shopping with, you know, husband or friends. That can also be part of your style rules. It's not even about the items themselves, but the process as well. Just what you have learned that worked for you. I know for Jane, she always shops with friends, but it's like 3-4 people. I happen to be on that list that she will shop with. Because she knows they get her and will support her and will do it in a way that works for her. She does not shop alone. And so, again, illustrating just those differences in style rules and how important that they are. But the trial and error part of arriving at that is really important, because what that is it's let's look at the external world and what's happened. We'll match that up with the inner vision and we'll see what wisdom falls out of that process.
And I think too that not shopping with the wrong people, because of that extroverted feeling, which is the auxiliary function, which wants to please others. You know, it wants to have that harmony, which is why you can say, my husband likes it, so I say yes, when it's actually not the right piece. So you're more likely to accidentally buy something wrong because you like the sales assistant, or your friend says she loves it or whatever. That there's that wanting, that desire for harmony can come in and then kind of derail your inner vision.
And even if you do stick to your style rules, it can make the shopping experience discordant. Because you've had to hold on to something and sort of argue, which is how it can feel to Fs. I know it doesn't feel that way to Ts. It's just a really stimulating conversation. It can feel like an argument to an F, to have to rebut an opinion that's strongly presented that you don't agree with. And that can make a shopping experience even more stressful. So, you know, of all the style types, INFJs would be in a group that I would say choose your shopping buddy very, very carefully.
Or shop alone. Like if you've got your set of rules and you know what they are and that's successful, just shop alone. And I would say too, especially with shopping for INFJs, it's probably going to be, you're going to find more stuff in the online world than you will at your local mall. Just because often it's harder to find your more unique pieces in the general high street, as we might call them.
Yes,
just looking
exactly.
At the last question from Tracy. Because we're a future-focused type, it can be hard to be content in the here and now. There's always a relentless quest for improvement. Trying to see details doesn't come naturally, so I find myself obsessing about this, sometimes late into the night, dreaming about the perfect thing to fill my wardrobe gaps, which often don't exist in reality. It disturbs my sleep. Okay, it's
Yeah.
disturbed already. Both tendencies tend to lead to exhaustion and overwhelm. What to do?
Mm.
I think this is. I think this is. I think we probably covered some of this in this whole. It's that inner vision, idealized perfection that maybe doesn't exist, and I think this is where sometimes, do you learn to sew or get things made? Have you?
Yeah.
If you've got some sort of inner vision, maybe that's the way to go. Is to go, well, maybe I'm not going to find it in a store, so maybe it's something that I make or have somebody make for me. You know, that could be something, or not getting too obsessed with the details. I mean, and I don't know. So when Tracy's saying getting obsessed with the details, I'm not quite sure what she means by that.
Yeah. I think this is where the parameters thing we talked about a little bit earlier can be really helpful. But importantly, in fact, most importantly about those parameters is they are self-determined, so that you are not subscribing to a set of rules, or in your suggestion, Imogen, about the time frame. It's not somebody else's time frame. It's parameters you have set for yourself. So there are some things that can be really helpful to move out of the inner vision and more into the practical real world, and try and balance those scales a little bit. Every style type has something that needs to be balanced. There isn't a style type that gets to escape that. But for the introverted intuitives, this tends to be one of the balance points for them, is moving out of that inner vision, which, as we've said, is very clear, very dear, and very trusted, into the practical real world, and matching those things up. And sometimes it means that there will be some disappointment. And that's why this is not just a one and done kind of thing where you can sit down and come up with a set of style rules that never change. And another thing that you can do is to keep a style diary at the end of every day and just jot down how you feel, and do that in a way that's meaningful for you. You might want to have a scale where you tick how certain outfits felt. And you can add this to the idea that Imogen shared before about the photo gallery, so that you have this list of this array of photos that work for you. And you can also add to you what does not work. It just doesn't work when I paired this with this. Yeah. That necklace made me feel this particular way. That kind of data, because it's self-referential, it's only coming from you, is extremely useful in providing those parameters, because it's defining, it's bringing things in. We're not going out, we're not in the perceiving, we're coming in the opposite direction, but it's all coming from you.
Yeah. And I think even adding to that would be, when I was wearing this outfit, like, what was the situation or occasion? Because it's that need for harmony to it, because it could have been, it's right for one occasion but not right for another occasion. And I think that could also be probably quite useful, the kind of people or something like that. That might be another piece of information that's really useful for an INFJ to think about.
Yeah, yeah.
So
how are we on time? We're a little over,
on this, and we're going to be back in a moment and talk general style types. I'm going to talk a little bit about introversion and extroversion and some other things. So we will talk to you again in a few moments. Bye for now.